interesting program. Let me get to my little cheat sheet here. And we're actually talking with some different people who are in the newspaper field. So we have 3 people on our panel tonight, and they are going to be Clay Neely, Toby Nix, and Scott Ludwig has stepped in for us today. Now, Scott is a veteran with Hometown Novel Nights. He's been with us a couple times. And he's also one of our founders. So we're always honored to have him on a panel. And Toby has been with us before, but we do have a new joiner this time, Clay Neely. And I'll just do a little bit of introduction for you. Clay is the managing editor and co-publisher of the Noonan Times Herald. His writings are often seen through the pages of the newspaper, and he's also involved in the day-to-day operations of publishing a newspaper, which I think is very fascinating. He's also had experience as an audio engineer, and I might want to talk to you at some point about that, doing voiceover work. So, Clay, would you like to tell us a little bit what you do?
I guess I do a little bit of everything, like you said. I've been at the paper here since 2013 when we moved back home from New England, and happy to be here. You don't realize what you got till you don't have it anymore, and you are so glad to be home because there is a home. And so anyway, at the paper, basically my days are spent kind of herding cats, I guess, running down stories, making sure the day-to-day stuff's running. I mean, just basically any sort of something that needs attention, I go to, which really helps with my attention span because it's limited. So I feel like I'm contributing a lot with a limited attention span. And so as far as writing is concerned, I have never really written much that doesn't involve the word allegedly or police or stuff like that. I haven't written any sort of books yet. Don't even know if that's a possibility at this point. Maybe once kids are gone, all that stuff, or I quit making up excuses. But basically, I'm just there to kind of make sure things get done, I guess, for lack of a better word. So hope that helps. I'm rambling.
That does help. Actually, one of the things I'm interested in, one of the things you said that you do the crime section at you moved on me at the newspaper. So allegedly and that sort of thing. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between writing for a newspaper and say creative writing?
When it comes down to getting new applicants from college and stuff like that, my wife talks about how we need to kind of beat the creative writing out of them and start fresh with just very basic writing, because as previous editors have told me, we don't get paid by the word. Make it clear, make it concise, make it so that I think Winston once said that the little old lady in Arnco knows what you're talking about. I mean, it's just make it clear. And so that's I got used to it, because I think the first thing I wrote was like in third person, and they kicked it back. Like, what are you doing? And but I did a couple of other beats before getting to crime. And I mean, honestly, I think most reporters, do their time with crime and then move on to something else. And I guess, I don't know, I like it again, because it fits my attention span. I like meeting with the people. I like the people I interact with. It's fun. It's quick. It helps me get copy in the paper and get on to other stuff that might need addressing or somewhere around the building. And like I said, I've asked other reporters, like, is this something you might want to take on, listening to the scanner all the time and, going to the jail. And they're like, no, you seem to like that. So that's what I've been sticking with it since I think 2016 or 15, whenever our previous crime reporter left, our publisher said, guess what? That's you now. I said, okay.
That's you now.
That's me. So yeah, I love it. I really do. And I don't know how much I'm growing as a writer, probably exponentially, not at all. But again, it's fun and it gets copy in the paper and it gets eyes. And I hate to be cynical, but that's kind of what my job is about. It's like, oh, you're just trying to sell papers. I'm like, yeah, that's the job. Yeah, that's what they want me to do.
So do you think you've got a book inside of you?
Maybe, yeah, someday. I mean, again, I've only been doing this maybe 6 or 7 years. And I'm still learning a ton. I mean, I don't think I'm anywhere near. I mean, I might be logging ideas and things like that, but as far as sitting down and writing something comprehensive, no, I wouldn't imagine doing that for a while. I mean, yeah. Again, it's a time thing and maybe even confidence, but the idea of doing a book right now just doesn't really seem to jive yet.
Does anybody have any questions for Clay?
Where does your muse come from? Where do your ideas, your inspiration come from? And how fun is it to try to chop those thoughts into 300 to 500 words?
Well, I'm grateful for the word limit, frankly. That really helps out a lot. If I had to do 1,000 word column a week, no one would read it and I would be miserable. Ideas typically come from a lot of the times just being a parent. I mean, that's probably the greatest thing that I've got going in terms of content right now, is just raising a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old who are really interesting characters. And then a lot of the times it's just when I get that hour to take my dog on a walk, that's when probably most of the heavy lifting gets done in terms of, like, you know, ideas and things like that. You kind of flush out things that you've accumulated over the week or something. It might be something that you heard on a podcast or a parallel or something your buddy said, or, you know, a little aha moment here and there. And you try to log them away. I've talked to Toby about this, where, you know, we both kind of suffer from, heck, it's, you know, a day before our deadline, and, you know, what do I got, you know, and you have to run through the Rolodex. And, you know, I know lots of great people that like to bank like 6 or 7. I mean, Larry Reed, he's got like 5 columns sitting in my editor box. I mean, like, ready to go. And I, you know, at some point I'd like to get up to that level of efficiency, but at this point, no, I just have to kind of pick what little nuggets I see each week and try to make something out of them, if that makes any sense.
You also are the editor and one of the publishers there. What role do you take in that, and how comfortable are you in that role?
Oh, I play really no role in terms of editing anything, especially columnists. I mean, what they turn in, I mean, I don't think this has even really happened before, but I mean, if someone turns in like I said, 1,000-word column, you might kick it back and go, what do you think? Maybe we could whittle that down to 6 or 7. And typically they're like, sure. But I think most of the columnists that we've had, I mean, they get it. And I've never really had, I mean, my favorite part is just reading them. I don't really offer any sort of, you know, critique, or, I mean, other than saying, I'll kick one back, like, that was really good. And I've done that several times with, you know, certain ones that typically stick out. But in terms of handling them, I'm basically just air traffic control. I'm bringing in the columns, making sure everything's proofed, formatted, looks good. We obviously go through and to make sure there are no grammatical errors, or now we do have, now I'm talking out of school here for Toby. We do have someone that works with Toby, Rebecca Leftwich, and this is by design. It seems to work okay. And she'll like, no, kick that. She'll, you know, say, you could say this better. Okay. But I think, I mean, she does the same thing with me. She'll say, like, you know, this is a really wordy way of saying that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Because that's basically all our business is, really trying to take this many words and get them down to here. And I mean, and I like it, frankly. I mean, it makes it a little bit easier to read, and, you know, say what you mean, but say it as clear as you can. So typically that's with fewer words. No, not at all. We do like guest columnists. We don't get them that often, because basically to be a guest columnist, we require consistency. You know, I'm like, if you can turn in a column, okay, say if it's like for food or something, that's once a month. But I mean, if you're going on the opinion page and you want to be a feature columnist, I would typically ask for probably a minimum of twice a month. I mean, weekly is great. And we do our best to prioritize local writers. I think when Beth and I came in, a lot of our columnists were kind of syndicated. We might have some people that, you know, they weren't necessarily from Noonan, and we wanted to make sure that our opinion page was strictly with people that are from Noonan, in order to kind of, you know, help reflect our community better. I mean, sometimes there's some good, you know, syndicated columnists. I mean, heck, Larry Reed's syndicated, but he also lives in Lake Redwine. But yeah, I mean, any kind of platform that we can give people locally to show off, we're all about it. I've tried to fill out all of our food columns with local writers, because instead of that, you're just pulling Metro Creative saying, here's how to make a, you know, cheesecake or something. There's really nothing to it. Any place that I can get in local people, I try to do though. Yeah, because I mean, we can typically find places where it would fit under a certain kind of umbrella, like something like that. Even with home and garden, I mean, that, from what I understand, people like interesting writing. So that's what we try to lean on if we can, instead of just pulling, wire or copy. I'd rather it just be interesting. No, not necessarily. In fact, that's been one of our goals. And I can't tell you it's not going super. I mean, we cover city council, but that's really about the extent of it and what we would like. And this is what we've been trying to do in the last year or so. We're trying to develop community correspondence, because we would like people out there that are covering, the development authority and the arts. I mean, anything that's going on out there. We wish we had just an East Side correspondent. It's something we've been trying to develop because, I mean, right now our full-time writing staff is around three reporters, and they're covering everything here. And, if we can get out to Sonoy, we want to, because that's one of our biggest underserved areas in terms of content. Yes, ma'am. We have online too. We print twice a week, Wednesday and the weekend, and then we're online. Better run it by my wife. If you have the time and the consistency, I mean, I really don't have a problem with it. I think our pages are better served having, local writers represented. And to be honest, I mean, we only have in each edition around 3 consistent columnists. Now we'll have letters to the editor or columns from like Drew Ferguson, or like maybe every once in a blue moon, like Matt Brass or something like that. But in terms of just being a regular columnist, I mean, like I said, it would need to be probably around a minimum of 2 columns a month. And that's it. I mean, and be concise again, if you can keep it around the 4 to 6, great. I mean, we can find room. I mean, honestly, we've quit running AP copy, except for like some upfront news briefs from around the world, because our mission is, why should we print anything that people can get anywhere else? Like, our focus is hyper local. So the only other kind of wire we run is from the state, from Capitol Beat. So again, the more local content we can put in there, the happier we are.
Our next guest actually is an investigator with the Coweta County Sheriff's Department. That's right, isn't it, Toby? And we have Toby Nix here with us. He's been with us before, and we're glad to have him back. I have to say that one of the things that I love about Toby's columns, and mostly I follow him on Facebook, is I love it when he talks about his wife and her cooking. So,
Well,
take it away, Toby.
Okay. Hopefully y'all can hear me. I'm on my cell phone, so I'm not very computer literate, but yeah, I enjoy writing about her. I don't know how much she enjoys being written about, but and she's also sitting in the living room and listening to me now, so I'm going to be very kind with what I say on this this thing. But I think, like Clay was talking about, the 400 to 500 word mark, and I think, and he can correct me when he comes back on, but I think I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years now. So to come up with something every week, some weeks I'll have something that I could get 800 words out of and still have something left, and then other weeks I'm struggling at the 200 or 300 word mark. So to the lady who spoke earlier, I couldn't see on the screen, but if she's got extra words, I might need some as the weeks continue on. But I'm not a very creative person, so I just write about what happens week to week. And then, some weeks a couple of things may happen, and I'll, as soon as it happens, I'm like, I got a column this week. And then other weeks I'm struggling. Most weeks, I would say I don't start on my column until it's about due. And that's not by plan or design. That's just how, I just have been in writer's block for a while now. It's tough to come up with something every week for, the first 6 or 7 months was okay. Then I was looking around like, all right, I need something to happen this week. I need something to happen. And then my job gives me a lot. And in fact, I deal with Clay a lot on the job. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was on my way in and I heard a call come out over the radio. I think it was a house fire maybe, or whatever it was. So I texted Clay, like, hey, because I know he's always close to the scanner. I don't know, if it's on all the time or whatever, but if I can give him a heads up, I try to give him a heads up. So, hey, this is going on. And I think his reply was about 3 minutes later, and it was a picture of the event. So he was already there. So I'm sure he gets lots of texts 24/7 on from all of us. But yeah, I love writing. I'm glad that people enjoy it. I don't think Clay has ever sent me a text that says it was good, like he told y'all earlier. I don't recall that ever. I see him laughing. But I had another point to make, and then it lost me when I was trying to dig on Clay. But yeah, I just wait for things to happen in my life, and I can get a 500 words out of it.
Well, I know that you have a couple of books as well. Would you like to mention those?
Yeah, so the first one I wrote was called Columns I Wrote, because it was columns I wrote, and I just took maybe a year or a year and a half of worth of columns and put them in a book. And then the second one, I'm not very good at title. I told you I didn't have creativity. So the second one I wrote was called A Book I Wrote, and it was another year or two worth of columns. And in that one, I included 4 longer chapters or something, like from my childhood, or just random stories at the beginning of that book. I want to, they're both on Amazon, or I have a lot of copies that didn't sell. So I'd be more than happy to meet somebody to get rid of these. I want to do one from my columns from last year, and I'll just say very briefly. So 2020, I lost my father in January, my mother in March, a friend in July, I think, brother in August, my aunt in August. So the columns from that year, because I write what happens, I think would be something nice, not nice because it's a terrible year, but something to look back. Yeah, to see how this random guy in West Georgia dealt with this, on a week by week, because some weeks I would have a column with a joke or whatever. So it was up and down of a pretty tough year. And I had a tough year, but almost everyone had a tough year in one way or another. You know what I'm saying? So it would be a year that, that we all were dealing with some sort of bruise that the year put on us. And I've got everything there, obviously, because it's written in the newspaper. Just everyone here, I'm sure, knows how hard it is to find the time to do the last 30% of what's needed to put it together and get it out. But that's where I'm struggling now, is just finding time with work and home and life and everything else to actually get that next book out. And I've got, like I said, if I could sit at a table and type, I could probably, I've got a lot of books in my head, but that's where they're at right now.
Excellent. Well, Toby, thanks for joining us again. Does anybody have any questions for Toby?
What got you to say, hey, I want to write a column for the Noonan Times Herald and let my heart out?
Well, it all started, my entire writing started off of Facebook. I just always used to write random, silly things, for lack of a better word. And a friend of mine, and she was actually at the in-person thing last year. We were at a gathering, and she said that she would be at parties, and she would read at her parties. She would read my Facebook post, and everybody in the room would get a kick out of them. And so she said, you need to write something, just write. But she kind of encouraged me to write, and because everything I write is just from my head, and you don't think anything in your head, you don't know that everybody else is thinking it or someone else is thinking it. So I never thought about writing it. But so she gave me a book from David Sedaris called Naked. And she said, read this. And I had grew up on Louis Grizzard. So I reread his books like the endings are going to change every couple of years. But so I started writing after I read that book, on, kind of putting everything down. I contacted actually another, I live in Heard County. I contacted this newspaper, and they started running it. And I never thought that Noonan Times Herald would be interested, because I'm, a silly guy from Heard County. And a lady I work with, actually, I don't know if I don't think it was Clay she contacted. It was Walter. She contacted someone with the Noonan Times Herald, I said, hey, we've got this guy that writes pretty good. We think y'all be interested. So it all kind of just snowballed from a friend of mine reading silly post on Facebook at a party. And I don't even, I think now for me, because when I come home from work and there's a bad call, or, you know, I've seen something or whatever, it might be therapy for me, because I'm not an educated writer, but I like when someone says that something I wrote was raw or emotional. That's, you know, like I just write what's in my head, and that's how most people, you know, talk, I guess.
You are absolutely a great front porch musings writer. You have that same quality of Louis Grizzard, and I always find your stuff very inspirational. So I enjoy that.
I get that comparison / compliment ever so often, and that's the best thing you can tell me. You know, I get called a lot of bad things during work hours, but when I get a Louis Grizzard comparison, and it might be a bad thing for some, but it's a good one for me. Like I said, I've got a stack of his books and I reread them, even though I know the ending.
But I think, how does your music play into it, Toby? Because I know you got a music background too. So
yeah, so we
how does that help you?
I don't know. It's just I like. It's funny that I write, and that I stand on stage and play guitar, and then I'll come on the panels and this and that, because I actually get stage fright a lot. So or I did. I'm getting better with it, and things like this actually help. But the music is just another outlet to everybody has bruises in their life. I think I wrote about that last week, actually, from a class I was taking. So we all have bruises, and we all have to have some kind of outlet for them. And mine is writing and you know, goofing off on stage. I'm not a very good guitar player, but I can play a song. I'm not a very good writer, but I can write a column. So I just I'm having fun making memories for as much time as I got here.
Okay, thank you, Toby. We're going to move on to our veteran, Scott, who, if you've been to many of our events, he actually does a lot of our emceeing because he's funny, and Mike and I aren't necessarily, but we can stand in when we have to. So Scott actually is a very prolific writer. You've written, what, 16 books? Is that right? 18 books, 18. 2 that I've missed somewhere along the way. And he also is the only sports writer that I will read because he makes them entertaining, and I could care less about sports. So let's introduce Scott Ludwig, one of our founders, and he keeps the program moving. So take it away, Scott.
Okay. You're wrong about Mike. I laugh at him all the time.
Oh.
So anyway, I was talking to Cindy. Cindy's my wife, and she doesn't listen to anything I say or read anything I write. So she's not listening to this, so I can talk more freely than Toby can. But Cindy suggested I talk about how I come up with my columns. So this is really for Toby. I think about my columns when I run. That's when I do all my writing. In fact, the first book I ever wrote was called Running Through My Mind. And it's about running, but that's how I come up with the stories. So, so in the morning, sometimes the stories come really clear to me, and I can pretty much write the whole story in my head and see it on the page and almost come within 50 words of how many words it's going to come out to be. So those are the good days. And then I have the days that sometimes are writer's block, like Toby referenced, that I come up with nothing. But some days I come up with 3 stories. And on a good day, I'll have time to come write them before they evaporate. Or back when before I retired, I'd write down notes before I went to work, and then I'd come home and work on it when I got home. And on a really good day, I could actually read what I wrote, because sometimes the handwriting, hurrying in the morning, especially on the cold mornings when your hands are still kind of cold, it's not so easy. But I wanted to tell a story about a column that I'm going to send it to Clay in the morning, because it's about music, and I know Clay's a music buff like me. And Cindy and I were at the Nutwood Winery down in LaGrange on Saturday, and they had this acoustic guitar guy that was doing renditions of songs that, you know, Cindy and I grew up with, and he was absolutely amazing. So between songs, I went up to him. He just played a Smashing Pumpkins song, right? And they were a hot group in the 90s. And I actually went to saw them at the Fox one time, and they were great. Anyway, so I went up to tell him how great his songs were. And he goes, I really appreciate that. And do you have any requests? How about some Sinatra? So here I am just thinking about, I just thought in my head how I love the Smashing Pumpkins song, and the guy wants to know if I want him to play a Sinatra song. And I'm thinking, my dad didn't even listen to Sinatra. So as he's talking to me about his musical background, I'm writing this column in my head, and then I finished it the next morning, and it's honestly, it's one of my favorite ones I've written all year. So I'm going to send that to Clay in the morning, and hopefully it'll show up in the paper somewhere. But and then Cindy said, I need to show you my coffee mug since I told you that story. And I don't know if you can read this. Is this easy to read? If not, it says, I may look like I'm listening to you, but in my head, I'm writing my novel. And that's a true statement. That's what I was doing when I was talking to this guy. But anyway, if you ever get down the chance to go to the Nutwood Winery, his name is Corbin, and he is absolutely fantastic. So, and cut me off when I've talked too long, but I've written columns for the Noonan Times-Herald now since December of 2016, back when Winston was still with the paper, and actually when Walter Jones was with the paper. And what's really neat, first of all, I'm honored to write for the paper where Louis Grizzard used to write. Absolutely, that's an honor to me. But I've met a lot of really cool people in Noonan and Coweta County from my columns, and I wanted to just tell you about a few stories, and I'll tell you until you look bored. And since I can't see anybody's face, that may be never. But cut me off, Angie, when you're ready, okay?
I'll cut you off when we're ready.
Okay,
You go
I'm
ahead.
trying to prioritize these, but my favorite is really not from Coweta County, but it came from a Coweta County person. I wrote a column a long time ago called Knowing When to Say Yes. It was about when to say yes to certain volunteer opportunities. And I ended the column with a reference to a golf tournament I watched in 2001 when Tom Pernice won. And at the end of the tournament, they were interviewing him, and he was holding his daughter. She couldn't have been but 4 or 5 at the time. And her daughter was born blind. Her name was Brooke. His daughter was born blind. And Jim Nance wrote a book, and he talked about how, man, this broke my heart when I read this sentence. He said that she was touching her daddy's face in search of a smile. And that got to me, and I used that at the end of my column. And the next thing I knew, somebody in Noonan wrote to me and said they knew Tom Pernice's brother, which would be the daughter's uncle. And he and I talked, and then I hooked up with her. And she's now 26 years old. She's learned to play the guitar. She's heavily involved in her church. And I sent her an email. I don't know how they do it, but she read the email and we talked. We had 2 long interviews, and then I got to write a column about her called At First Sight. And that was one of my favorites, just getting the opportunity to meet this girl that I saw on TV 20 years ago when she was a little girl. And that was just meant a lot to me to get to write that story. So that was one. Another one I wrote, the guy that ended up being my best man at our wedding, he and I went to college together, and we used to have cold duck parties on Friday night. And we promised each other that we were gonna toast each other with cold duck when we retired. Unfortunately, he passed away, brain cancer, when he was 57, a couple of years ago. So I wrote a column about that called The Toast, talking about it. And I got an email from a guy in Noonan that said he had 2 bottles of vintage cold duck that he lost his wife. He'd never get around to drinking, and I was welcome to him if I like. So I went over to his house and I met him, and he talked about his wife, and there was evidence of their life together all through the house. They had, I'm going to say 500, but it was probably more than that, clocks all over the place, because that's what they did. They went to antique stores, antique markets, to auctions, and they bought clocks. And he said, I used to have more, but I got rid of 200 a couple of years ago. So So his name was Gene. At the time he was 87. He just turned 90 last October. And I wrote a column about him and his wife called Partners for Life. And to this day, Cindy and I still, we have dinner with him quite often and share bottles of wine because he's a big wine drinker. And he doesn't drive when he drinks wine. So we go to his house for that. And he comes over here to look at old cars with me.
You know,
how am I doing, Angie?
you're doing great, but I want to mention something. One of the
Okay.
things that I always love about your writing when it's not sports related is how well you touch on the human condition. Like that is just one of the things that whenever I'm a softie, right? We all get that, but you can bring me to tears in 350 words. And that's a pretty incredible thing. I mean, just you talking about the daughter searching for the smile.
Yeah.
That made me sentimental because I think that's just being able to see that and to understand the significance of it. You have just such a beautiful gift with capturing that humanity in a way. And I always enjoy that in your writing.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Continue.
Okay. All right. So I wrote a column one time about how, okay, my wife calls me OCD, and she's probably right to a degree, about tracking my running mileage very meticulously because I run every day and I write down everything and I can tell you exactly how far I've run at any given time. And I wrote about that I'm always on time. And by on time, that means 15 minutes early. So one of the readers in Coweta County, her name was Barbara, she wrote to me and said we had a lot in common and that we were soulmates and we needed to talk. So we had lunch together and I actually found somebody more OCD than me because we were trading and we had a lot in common, a lot of the same things in common, like, you know, blue shirts, red shirts. Well, I don't wear red, blue shirts, white shirts, whatever. But she taught me when she said that her hangers in her closet have to be exactly a ½ inch apart all the way across. So she's more OCD than me. And anyway, I wrote a column about the two of us and she used to be a runner, but now she's a walker. So the column was called Soul, S-O-L-E mates, because we were. And we're still friends with her as well. So we got Jean and we got Barbara. So I got 2 friendships from the paper so far, if you don't count Clay and Toby. And this one meant a lot to me. I don't keep in touch with him anymore, but a gentleman by the name of Thomas, he's about my dad's age. He wrote and said he liked one of my columns and he said, come over and see some of my writings that my grandson did. So I went over to his house. He actually lives in the neighborhood next to my son. And we sat on his driveway that night and his son was there and his grandson was not there, but his son was there. Anyway, he knew so much about the history of Atlanta. He talked about when he used to go to the original Chick-fil-A and how he was good friends with Truett Cathy, and Truett used to come wait on him. And my wife works for Chick-fil-A, so this story's meant a lot to me hearing those. And I thought, God, maybe someday my grandson will like to sit in the driveway and listen to me telling him these stories. But anyway, I wrote a column about Thomas called Perfect Stranger, because that's, you know, he was, and he invited a perfect stranger to come meet him and all that. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, right after the column appeared, his daughter wrote me a note and said that he'd like to give her father a framed copy of the column for his 80th birthday. So I'm pretty sure she went by Clay's office and picked one up, or else she reprinted it off the internet. I'm not really sure, but she did give him a framed copy of it for his birthday. So I thought that was kind of special. And this is a funny one. And this one, I thought I was in trouble for this one, but not with Clay, but with somebody. I wrote a column called Voting Rights and Wrongs. And it was about that people just don't turn out to vote. And I thought that was wrong. This was before the last election, because the last election, a lot of people voted, but the one before that, nobody did. So there was a guy named Laban King that was on the ballot to run for mayor of Atlanta. And then when I saw the results of the election, he got 0 votes. So to magnify my point that nobody votes, I said, the guy didn't even vote for himself, right? So I got an email the day or two after the article appeared from Laban King. Okay. And I went, oh God, here comes a lawsuit. But actually what he did, he explained that he was originally a nominee for the mayor, and he changed his mind. So he withdrew from the election. The ballots were already printed and they couldn't take his name off, but any votes that cast for him were voided. So that's why he got 0 votes. I went, whoops. So I told him I
So
would make him, I said, I'll make amends in a future column, and I did. And the future column was called Doing the Right Thing. And in it, I made amends to that, and as well as a lot of things that I did when I was a kid that I probably shouldn't have. How am I doing, Angie? Am I running out?
You're
I
fine.
think you're awesome, but does anybody have any
Okay.
questions for Scott
I got
before he
more.
continues?
I
I
got
know,
more.
but hold on. Let's
Let
see
him
if
keep
anybody got any.
talking. We got time.
We've got plenty of time, but does anybody have anything they want to talk about any of the things he's read already? Okay, I've got to tell you, the voting rights and wrongs I thought was very cool. I think I remember seeing that article, and I think I saw your correction of it, or your amends, which I thought was very cool. Continue.
All right. So one of my running routes takes me through Harrelson, which is right about 4 miles from my house, I live in Sonoy. And I'd always run through Harrelson, and there was a dog that used to come out, and it was a brindle dog. I don't know if you know what a brindle, it's a brindle pit bull, but it was the sweetest dog. It'd always come up and run behind me and touch his nose on the back of my calf. That's how I knew he was there, or her. Her name was Lucy. And I didn't know who owned the dog. And so one day I was running through Harrelson a couple months ago, and there was a posting on the telephone pole saying that Lucy was in the Sonoy Animal Hospital and had a lot of problems, and that she gave birth to 10 puppies in one of those abandoned buildings in Harrelson, and they were all dead. When they finally found the mother, the puppies had all died from the cold, and they took the mother, Lucy, into the hospital, and they needed a lot of money for medical treatment. And she had a GoFundMe page. The girl's name was Josie Warren. I think she's probably not 23 years old, but she worked at the animal hospital. But she was saying that she started a GoFundMe, and it didn't have a whole lot of funds at the time. And after the column appeared in the paper, they made enough money to pay for Lucy's medical bills. And she's on the mend. I don't think she's been adopted yet, but they gave her a new name because, as the girl said, new life, new name. So the dog's new name is Bella. So if anybody is looking for a dog to adopt, Bella the brindle dog. So
And I actually know Bella.
Dogs to walk, huh? Do you know Bella?
I know Bella. Yes, I know Bella. This is over in Sonoy.
Yep. Well, Harrelson, but yeah.
Yeah, in Harrelson.
Uh-huh.
My friends live over in Harrelson, and their daughter loves Bella, and so they keep me updated on that. But last I heard, she's still at the vet right now, isn't she?
I believe
Is that
so.
what
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but she'll be a great pet. She's the sweetest, most loving dog you'd ever want to meet.
Yep.
So.
Okay, I got two or three more. Two. Am I all right for time? Okay.
You're good.
So I'm a big runner, and I was invited to talk to the East Coweta high school cross country team one time to get them pumped up for the year. Thank goodness they didn't ask me to run. But anyway, I said, I'd like to profile one of your runners. Give me somebody on your team that deserves it. And they gave me the name of she was a sophomore at the time, Shannon Ferry. And she made for a really good story. She was winning a lot of the meets when she was a sophomore. I mean, against juniors and seniors. And I don't know if you know the East Coweta mascots, the Indians. So I wrote a story about her called Indian Legend. And then subsequent to that, I was invited to the Coweta cross country championships, which was really cool, seeing all those schools together. And you picture rivals doing this, but it wasn't anything like that. They were posing for photos after the competition, regardless of who won. The teams were all getting together for pictures. It was really neat. And so I wrote a follow-up article to that called Purple Hearts. And it was called that because purple is the school color at East Coweta. And then they invited me to their sports banquet at the end of the year, but I was out of town. I didn't get to go to that. and I hate that because I really wanted to go, but that was kind of neat. Two more real quick. Family Jewel, I wrote that one. It was about Richard Jewell. And it was published the week before the movie came out. And the reason I wrote it was because I didn't know him well, but we knew Richard Jewell because one of the girls that used to babysit our boys when they were little ended up marrying him. I remember we got the wedding invitation in the mail and it said, invite Dana Story to marry Richard Jewell. And I said, oh, poor girl, she's marrying a guy with the name of somebody like Richard Jewell. And we got to the wedding and it was him. And we met him and he was the sweetest kid you've ever want to meet. I mean, for real. Anybody that would talk to him for 2 minutes would know he would not do what he was suspected of doing at the time. Anyway, I portrayed him. And then I don't know if you know this, but he passed away not too long after that. He died, I can't remember the age now, 46, 45. He had some medical problems, but I went to his funeral as well. And at the funeral, it was downtown Atlanta. He got married in Fayetteville. The funeral was in downtown Atlanta and it was a packed house. And they never mentioned the Olympics or the bombing or anything, but they all the comments were very favorable. And so in the column, I portrayed him as a hero, which is what he was. He was trying to save people's lives. And I didn't know what the movie was going to be about, but we went to see the movie the weekend it opened and it portrayed him the same way. So thank goodness for that, because he was an American hero. And I'm going to end on a column this is the only column I ever wrote that well, maybe the GoFundMe for Bella the dog was one of them, but this one I was really hoping it would get some reaction or action, and it didn't. But this one was called Heisman Hopeful. And I was writing about, Cindy and I, we went to the University of Florida, so we're diehard Gator fans. And our basement has been converted to a Gator room. And everything in there is orange and blue or Gator. And we have 116 different things hanging on the wall. And you go, wow, that's pretty OCD. And I actually counted them for another column, but actually it's 117. Somebody gave me something yesterday we don't have. Hold on. So anyway, the column was called Heisman Hopeful because the Florida Gators had 3 Heisman Trophy winners and they're all still alive. Steve Spurrier, Danny Werfel, and Tim Tebow. And my goal, my dream is to get one of them, if not all, in the Gator room and pose for a picture on the blue couch in front of the orange rug, sitting between me and Cindy in Gator attire. And I thought, surely somebody's going to notice and see it. I sent it to everybody I knew when it ran, put it on Facebook, and somebody said, Tim Tebow will make an appearance for a $1,000 donation. And I even have some connections with the athletic department of the University of Florida. And I said, get this in Steve Spurrier's hands. And I don't know that it did or didn't, but to this day, I don't have that picture yet. Because if I do, you're going to read about it for sure. So, all right. I think
Fantastic.
I'll stop there. Oh, except for one thing, Clay, I'm going to send that music column to you shortly because I'm going to read it one more time to make sure I like it because I think I love it. And secondly, about the Sonoya Museum, the museum asked me to write a story about their reopening. They were going to reopen April 2nd or 3rd, I'm not sure. And they talk in the column, I wrote a column for that and I'm hoping Clay will run that, not anytime soon, but the week of that they're going to open. I've already got it written, but I won't submit it until later because I don't want to overflood his inbox because I know he's got a lot of Larry Reed's columns sitting there already.
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
You should talk about that recent thing involving the death penalty and Sports Illustrated and stuff like that. I thought that was a pretty interesting story.
Oh, okay. A real quick one on that one. I quoted a gentleman by the name of Jeff Durkovitz. Is that right, Clay? I can't remember his name now. I can pull the column. I won't pull it up. Anyway, he went to prison for 17 years for something he didn't do, for rape and murder that he did not do. And he wrote a column a long time ago on the back page of Sports Illustrated about how inmates in prisons really look forward to Super Bowl. It's, you know, it's one of the few things they get to look forward to. And I knew personally of someone that was incarcerated that they told me something similar. And they said the only thing they look forward to reading more than letters from home is Sports Illustrated. And so I wrote a column about that for Clay. And so the guy that wrote that original column, he has some kind of Google alert that anytime his name is mentioned in the media or online or anything, it alerts him. So he sent me a note saying he read the column and he really, really liked it. And I told him I appreciate it. And I said, you know, I would love to tell your story if you would like. And so anyway, we had 2 very long telephone conversations. And I wrote and I know Clay likes 500 to 600 words, but I think, here's the OCD guy again. I sent him a 1,249 page story about the gentleman and his life. And it's called Truth Decay. Because he was trying to tell the truth, but nobody would believe him. Anyway, eventually DNA proved that he did not do what he was accused of doing. And now he's out. He got out in 2007. He went to law school, he got a law degree, and he started one of those organizations like the Project Innocence. If you saw the movie Just Mercy, he's very connected to those people because those people did some work for him when he was in prison. He's a very interesting guy, and you know, he got some kind of settlement from the state of New York, and he used that towards starting his foundation. So yeah, that was kind of a cool thing too. I put that in my book. It's about, you know, when you're gone, if you leave something behind that has been written with your name on it, it's like you never left. And I don't know, it just drives me to, honestly, you know, you said 18 books. I've got 3 more that I think I'll finish before this year is over. Because your days are numbered. I'm 66 now. How far do you go from there? 67, 97? Took a lot of little funky tests, runners related tests that say, it looks like I'm going to hit 93. That's the number I've been getting a lot lately. So that seems like a lot right now, especially some mornings when it's hard to get out of bed and walk across the floor. But just a comment about that book. You know, I know Toby had a rough year last year, and I had a rough year as well. I lost my son, 34, and that was the inspiration for that book. The inspiration for the title was one of my friends, my best friend actually, my best running buddy. He said, you know, I don't know what to say. How do you find the words? And I thought, finding the words, oh my God, I'm using that. And I just started thinking about it more and more, and all the people I've lost, and as a tribute to them, and to understand, you know, everybody matters, I guess. Anyway, that's why I wrote that book. And that one probably means more to me than any of the books I've written.
Thank you all. You've been a great panel tonight. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm a little inspired to maybe try to write something short. I've done that in the past. So I might try.